Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are returning and have seen other videos of mine, welcome back. Either way, you are most welcome. My name is Andrew. The cat you see sleeping on the bed behind me is Shadow. And this is going to be the third story in the specific Canadian examples of potential for erosion of free speech in Canada. And this one is going to cover the Freedom Convoy and certain issues surrounding that protest. This has been a very polarizing issue in Canada, with most people either falling on one of the two extremes. And so you're going to see my opinion on it. So enjoy. We are going to be moving on to the next section, which is a very heated topic here in Canada, and that's the Freedom Convoy. Oh boy, this one is pure trouble. So how do I break this down? I'm not going to go into a lot of the nuance of this situation. There is a lot of nuance when it comes to this. I'm not even going to talk about the right or the wrong of what the truckers or what the protest did. I do want to say that although I support them wanting to protest, I am not completely in favor of everything they did. For instance, at the U.S.-Canada border, they blocked off all ways in and out, and that is illegal. There has to be allowed for some traffic movement as well, even if that movement is hindered, as well as the ability for emergency vehicles to get through as quickly as possible. So all I'm really going to be talking about when it comes to the trucker convoy is the reduction or the possible reduction of freedom of speech and expression. So you may feel one side or the other. I know this is a very polarizing topic in Canada for a lot of people. I don't think it really helps how the media portrayed it. The media portrayed it very, very negatively, and I don't know how much of that was their doing, or how much Trudeau insisted that they do that. Unfortunately, Trudeau has limited exposure to certain media sites and outlets based on their opinions when it comes to the pandemic and how the government handled it. And so he deemed certain websites not, I forget the wording he used, but it was something along the lines of like not legitimate media because they criticized some of the policies that were implemented. Rightly, in my opinion, a lot of what they criticized was legitimate. Things like, well, you said at the beginning of this that masks wouldn't protect you, and then now you're saying that you need to wear masks. So what is it, and why the sudden change? Turns out that it was because the hospitals had a shortage of masks and they needed to get masks, so they lied to the people about it protecting them, which then incited a lot of these quote-unquote anti-maskers. Well, they said this and now they're changing their mind, so clearly they're lying. So I get that. But yeah, so going back to the Freedom Convoy, basically, Trudeau labeled the protest as dangerous, and so enacted the Emergencies Act power, which allowed him to use the police to remove the protesters. That's a big concern for me. The right to protest is protected under our freedoms in Canada, under the section that deals with freedom of speech and expression. So this creates a very dangerous precedent where any provincial premier, any city mayor, or the prime minister could deem a protest dangerous only because they say so, with absolutely no evidence, and either enact a state of emergency if you're Ontario, or if you're a city, or enact the Emergencies Act if you're the prime minister, and just remove them because you don't like what they're saying. Now, there's a lot of debate about whether he removed them for the illegality of the protest in Ottawa, but what he said at the time was that they posed a danger, and that's why he was enacting the act, as far as I can remember. So basically, it means that protests are no longer protected, unfortunately, in Canada, because I do believe that once you remove it once, you've lost that freedom. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't think he should have the right to do that because it was inconvenient for him. I also know that there was probably, well, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing there was a lot of pressure from outside sources from different countries so what a lot of people don't realize, because it wasn't necessarily covered in the media from those countries, was that protests were happening around the same time of the Freedom Convoy. They were happening all over the world based on lockdowns and mask mandates, and so vaccine mandates, and so on and so forth. I know in Europe, countries just completely refused to even air anything when it came to the protests. And this Freedom Convoy in Canada became a global phenomenon where, like, everyone around the world knew it was happening. It was on all the media everywhere because we were covering it. And I think a lot of that was emboldening people in other countries to do more protests and to ramp them up in their countries. And so I think a lot of governments were kind of putting pressure on Canada to kind of like, okay, this needs to end. So I don't know how much of that played a part, if it did or if it didn't. I'm guessing it did. So that is an issue too. Like, we're supposed to lose our freedoms because other countries don't like it that we're protesting. That's a bit of a problem to me too, and the fact that Trudeau potentially was like, yes, they're right, and I must end this now because I don't want to deal with this, pressure anymore. If that's true, then to me that's a big issue as well. And another issue that I have is so people in Ontario, I think it happened in other provinces too, but I know specifically of examples of this that happened in Ontario. What happened was they would go onto either Facebook or Twitter and they would just write a comment like, I support the Freedom Convoy. Nothing inflammatory, nothing like, yeah, let's burn down the government, nothing like that. Just something as simple as, I support the Freedom Convoy. And within the next couple of days, there would be a knock at their door, and it was an OPP officer or an Ontario Provincial Police officer that would show up and explain to them that, oh, well, the protest is illegal, and here's a pamphlet explaining all of that. And to me, that's nothing less than an attempt at intimidation and a veiled threat. I don't know how other people feel about that, but like, that's ridiculous. I'm well aware that the government is tracking our social media. Police have admitted that they follow, like for instance, if there's a bank robbery or something, they'll actually go and check social media to see if anyone's posting about anything, to see if they can get any information. And there have been stupid criminals that have, like, for instance, a bank has just been robbed, and all of a sudden you're posing with a bunch of money that you didn't have the day before. Police have apprehended criminals that way. So I'm well aware that this happens. It's not a shock to me that that happens. But I thought it was freedom of speech to be able to say almost anything. Yes, I get it. There are limitations, but these people had not broken any of those limitations. They were just saying, I support the convoy. And for a cop to show up and, without saying it, essentially say, I know where you live, I know your opinions, and I think you should change them. How is that not intimidation? How is that not some threat? That's not freedom of expression. That's not freedom of speech. That's a police state. Just ask the individual in Newfoundland who tweeted about the premier, and oh wait, you can't because he was shot in his own home, because even though the police deemed it not a threat, went to talk to him, and supposedly he pulled the gun and the police officer had to defend himself. That's a whole thing here in Canada as well. Go look that up if you want. But if we can't say things now on social media, that is a limit to our freedom of speech. And that's the big problem in this, I think. The other issue I have with Trudeau is that he refused to meet and talk with the truckers. And by the way, truckers in Canada are like the backbone of our economy. Because to him they were the other, or they were just the wrong. He definitely played identity politics when it came to this whole issue. I hate identity politics. It's a stupid position to take. And he literally in Parliament referred to them as misogynistic, racist, women-hating, science deniers, and the fringe. And that's a tactic, by the way, that the left uses regularly. Basically, it elevates them and lowers those with any differing opinion so that they have an excuse not to have to deal with them. And incidentally, and I will include a link to this so that you can watch it for yourself, but he told a Jewish conservative member of parliament that she and the Conservative Party can go stand with people who wave swastikas and those who wave the Confederate flag. So he's basically dismissing them as Nazis and racists. And, oh, well, you want to actually talk to them? Well, no, you can go and do that out there then. You must be like them too. Now, I don't think he knew that she was Jewish when he said that, but either way, it's not appropriate for him to say that about workers from Canada who all they really wanted was to end some of the ridiculous mandates that were happening at the time. It didn't make sense to them where they could work in the US a certain way and then come over to Canada and then have to stay in isolation for 2 weeks, even though when they're trucking they don't have to have contact. They don't have to have physical contact with people. They can literally get to a site. They can call in that they're there. They'll tell them which dock to go to. They dock their stuff, and then they stay in their truck and they don't even get out. So there's so limited risk of spreading the virus in that case that they felt that it was ridiculous that they were having to self-isolate like that. And by the way, this was not a vaccine issue. I think it was something like 90% of them were all vaccinated, were fully vaccinated. So it wasn't a vaccine issue for them. And just to completely vilify them and say that these people are racist and evil because one day in one moment, one of the media outlets caught someone in the protest with a Confederate flag, who incidentally was then asked to leave by the convoy because they didn't want that as part of their message. But they didn't cover that in the news. I honestly never thought I would see a time in Canada where the Liberals started acting like authoritarians, removing freedoms from their citizens. I never thought I would see a time where the Conservatives were fighting for freedom of speech here in Canada. And I never thought I would see a time where the NDP, the Working Person's Party, that's what they call themselves, vilifying truckers and essentially saying they just deserve what they got. So that's an issue for me. My other issue, I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, was the media coverage of this. It was very biased. I can give you an interesting example. So there's a inquiry going on right now about whether Trudeau needed to enact the Emergencies Act or not. Some of my friends think this is going to be his downfall. I don't think it actually is. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I do want to get into this as well. I think, let's say best case scenario, they come out and say, oh, Trudeau did not need to enact this act. There were other ways of doing this. Okay, let's say they come out with that. There's nothing will happen to him. I mean, the Conservatives can use it as an attack against him in the next election, but there's no punishment that will happen because he enacted it. They don't have any teeth to do anything, even if they find him in the wrong. And I don't think they will, by the way. I think it is much more likely that they will find something like this. They'll say there were potential for other possible ways of doing this, but he was totally within his right to enact this act. I think that's where they're going to come down, personally. There have been some interesting things that have come out in the inquiry. I'm thinking about waiting until the inquiry is completely finished and then looking over all the information and potentially doing a video all about that, because there are some very interesting things. Like, I believe, for instance, I was reading where, he claimed that these people were dangerous. Someone came out and they knew the police never felt that they were in danger, for instance, which very much goes against his claim that these were dangerous people. I don't know if I'm exactly quoting that properly, so take that with a grain of salt, and if I go into it later, you'll understand. So the media has been covering this has been covering the convoy in a very negative light. And here's my example. So just as this inquiry starts, I was reading an article. I won't say which media source it was. It was a fairly big one in Canada. That's all I'll say about it. It was one of the bigger ones in Canada. And the title of the I can't remember the exact title, but something was like Freedom Convoy prevented 12 children from getting cancer treatment, which sounds horrible. But if you actually read into the article, it explains that because the Freedom Convoy was going on, what the police did was, in certain areas of Ottawa, they set up checkpoints and basically refused anyone who wasn't local to that area from going in, so as to prevent the Freedom Convoy from spreading out further in Ottawa. And it was actually them who did not allow these families who tried to go in to get treatment because they were not local. It also the place was still open, and you could get to it. It was inconvenient to get there, and it also said that many of these families just chose not to go to Ottawa anyway and chose to get it somewhere else. but the way they were talking in the headline, and unfortunately most people only read the headline and don't read the story, well, it's the truckers' fault. Well, yeah, the truckers were having the protest, sure, but did the truckers stop them at the checkpoints? No, that was the police. Did they not come in because of the truckers? Well, yeah, some of them did, but they got the treatment elsewhere. So how is that really the truckers' fault? If anything, I think the police could have done a much better job of screening people. If a person was coming in who wasn't from that area but had a note from, like, say, this clinic that said, oh yeah, this child is here to get cancer treatments, I would think that the police would let you through, or I would hope that the police would let you through, but apparently that was not the case as far as I read. So whose fault was it? You can make up your own decision when it comes to that. I don't blame the truckers. In my opinion, it wasn't their fault. Yes, that was happening at the same time, absolutely, but it was not their fault. And there have been multiple media stories like that. Even when it was happening, like, someone defaced the Terry Fox Memorial in Ottawa, and I mean, they can't really, no one has been able to prove that it was someone that was part of the trucker convoy that defaced it. Is it likely? Yes, probably it is. Someone from them did, but they also, after that, hired a guard to protect the truckers. Hired guards to protect the monuments. So, but they didn't cover that part of that story. For instance, like I said before, the Confederate flag showed up for a couple minutes in one of the protests, and that person was asked to leave the protest. But they didn't cover that. They just covered that it had showed up. And all of a sudden, they were all racist, and we don't have to deal with them. That's identity politics 101. So I don't like that how the media has handled this at all. I don't like how Trudeau handled this. I don't like how the police handled this. I don't like how the truckers were protesting in all cases. That being said, like I said in this video, my concern is our freedoms and our rights here in Canada, and unfortunately, there is significant potential that this has harmed them deeply. Apparently, you can't go on Facebook or Twitter and say what you're thinking anymore, because that is no longer our freedom. Apparently, you're not allowed to protest if you're deemed dangerous, because no one can be deemed dangerous ever, right? Oh wait, no, everyone can be deemed dangerous anytime, especially when you don't have to prove it. Yeah, this one is deeply problematic, to me. I'm making up words, problematic. No, it's deeply problematic, and it's a big issue. It's a big issue. This has probably damaged our rights more than most things have recently. The only thing I think that's damaged them more has been the pandemic overall. But this one did a lot of damage. But anyway, those are the examples. I hope you enjoyed them. What did you think of the trucker, the Freedom Convoy? Leave a comment about it in the description if you want. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe. And until the next one, I will see you then. Have a good day or a good week. Bye-bye.